Hello, welcome to the episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Find me on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes and content. And, of course, check out the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Awesome show for you guys today. I am really psyched to be joined by Joe Pinchin. He is the manager of digital content for the Chicago Bulls. Heard of them? Oh, and it's really cool to pick his brain about how the Bulls do what they do. Also learn a lot about his time spent in the British Basketball League, the BBL, with the Leicester Riders. So really cool to hear about that experience and the perspective he gained there. And you're really going to enjoy this conversation. A couple of things that stood out to me from the chat with Joe, among a lot of things, of course, as you'll see, is really talking about the passion. You can tell early on that he talks all about how he truly loves basketball and how he really loves what he does with creating content and building fandom, developing fans, and the business of sport. You'll hear that come out when he talks about the Leicester Riders experience as well. And just what a great message to come away with. If you come away with nothing else in this conversation, it's that passion. How passion, he'll tell you, leads to the best work as well. It doesn't, when you work the crazy long hours and days and holidays and everything that sports entails, it's so necessary to have that passion, because if you're working 16 hours a day or 100 hours a week, if it feels like work, that's going to be a pretty miserable life. But when you are doing something you're truly passionate about, that you'll be doing, that you would pay to do, that's really where it comes into play. And the other thing that came out, I want to point to as well, again, among a lot of insights you'll get from this chat with Joe, is the success they've had with the Bulls archive accounts. And now he talks about how they are now monetizing it with sponsor content. But the Bulls archive accounts really took off around The Last Dance, but came about because they realized they were sitting on a gold mine of content. Some of those, a lot of those photos from the 90s that had yet to be digitized or have been digitized and you hadn't yet seen the light of day. And what a great message as well to take away of how much gold you could be sitting on and not even realize it, whether it's in that archive or in places you haven't looked before, people you haven't talked to before, and just so many great stories to tell and more ways to connect fans with the brand, with the history of the team, make that nostalgia come alive, or other parts of the organization come alive, not just the historical stuff. But again, you're sitting on so much great content that it can bring out these awesome stories that fans can connect with. So stick around, because you're going to hear a great ton on those insights, and a whole lot more with Joe Pinchin of the Chicago Bulls. Right back from this episode's opening segment, and I am so psyched for today's guest. We've already been geeking out a little bit offline. We could have kept going, but we had to start recording at some point. My guest on today's podcast is Joe Pinchin. He is the manager of digital content for the Chicago Bulls. Welcome to the podcast today, Joe.
Thank you very much for having me. Pleasure to be here. Like you said, I think we could have probably done a couple hours just getting to know each other and geeking out before we even press record. So look forward to the discussion, man.
Heck yeah, really psyched to pick your brain. The Bulls are one of the best organizations in sports when it comes to digital and social, and you're a part of a great team there, so anxious to learn from you. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, tell us about your background, how you got started building your skills in school, the time you spent with the Leicester Riders, and the opportunity with the Bulls, and any tips for folks that want to emulate your path.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess word of caution, if you're about to try and emulate this, it wasn't always the smoothest. But for me, I guess going back from the start was basketball. It started with a passion for playing basketball as a teenager. Fell in love with the game, wanted to be involved in any way I could. That initially was, of course, playing and wanted to be a player, and was fortunate enough to play for a little while in England and around a few places, and got to knowing a little bit about the game from a player stance. Was self-aware enough that wasn't going to go and make millions as a player, but was able to be good enough to be on some teams that allowed me to, travel and meet a bunch of people and be in different places over a period of time, and hang around at least long enough to get to know the British infrastructure really well. And then kind of utilize the last few years of me playing to get to know the game from an assistant coach standpoint with other teams and programs I was involved in, from an organizational and operational running standpoint, structurally, how the game was set up in England, and just kind of kept that passion for basketball going. From there, knowing Korea from a basketball sense was probably coming to a fairly rapid sense in my 20s. Wanted to make sure I put myself in a position to stay involved in the game. Took a job working with Loughborough University, which is where I was based, and essentially took a job to allow me to spend my free time volunteering with the local professional franchise, which was the Leicester Riders, which was based at the time in Leicester, which is about 10 miles down the road from where Loughborough University is in England. So super, super close by. Had a bunch of historical ties to Loughborough, was where the franchise had started. And at the time, they were looking to move and find a new home from where they were playing. They were playing in a very small, very old, probably one of the worst, if not the worst venue in the professional league in England. We're looking to upgrade. So jumped on board there from a volunteer standpoint to start with, dealing with nothing to do with our digital and our media side, very much on the building of our player development pathway at Loughborough and at the high school nearby at Chalmers College. For those, I guess, US listeners, there's no kind of restrictions in the sense of NCAA. As a pro team, you can be involved, and generally you see involvement in player development from youth age through to professional. You can offer, scholarships, contracts at any age and still be able to go to school and play and things like that as well. So, heavily involved in that was where I started. And then as I started, this is about 8-9 years ago, maybe even a decade ago now. It was kind of a growth point and growth inflection for the Leicester Riders team. They were, had been in hard times, had a new managing director become involved and start to reform the franchise and start to push forward, form new partnerships, and from a sponsorship standpoint, but also from a player development standpoint. That launched our partnership with Loughborough, and then I got more and more involved with the club. We were a super small staff base, similar to I think what you would see in minor league sports here. And so I wore a lot of hats. Some weeks was dealing with the pathway and things that I was passionate about, and others was going out in the community and being a coach, and then it drifted into, okay, we need to have more bums on the seats as a fan base. We need to grow our awareness in the city. So then it started working in the marketing side of things and growing the team, growing our fandom, starting to work with the other sports teams in the city on different projects to align ourselves with Leicester sport. And that kind of just kept going. It kept growing. I've always been someone that's been creative, enjoyed photography and sketching, drawing, painting in the past. And so the ability to be creative and make some things that ultimately help the business was fun, something that kind of found a renewed love for. And went from recording on a baseline with my iPhone and tweeting some videos, which at the time were well received because the league wasn't in a great place digitally, through to learning photography basics, to graphic design basics, to growing that out to be able to produce video, start to understand platforms, start to understand marketing funnels and how it was impacting the bottom line of our business and the growth that we needed to see, to the value it added to partners. And as we grew through from local international partnerships, and then as the team started to compete in Europe, into partners that were interested across Europe. So it was just this perfect education, a very, very unique situation to come on board with the franchise at an inflection point, at a perfect point to grow. Had a ton of success on the court, which made my life super easy at times from a marketing sense. We had won, double digits trophies in the senior men's league, and then a bunch of trophies. I think I left with something, I think it was like 56 national titles of the program whilst I was involved there. So across the different levels, and just, came out the back of it with a solid base of education around sport. Obviously digitally specifically grew into freelance opportunities across Europe and across the world, and started to grow myself there. and then ended up at the Bulls. It's kind of a roundabout way of saying how I got here so far.
Yeah, I guess give us an idea of what the BBL looks like. Are players is it their full-time job? Do they have other jobs to make ends meet? Are they making good money? Has the league grown more in other years? And I guess also how is the league and team kind of positioned for fans? Is it like a minor league out here where it's basically like affordable family entertainment, or is it really come see the best of the best that play this sport? So a bunch of loaded questions there, as I'm good at doing.
Yeah, Neil, you cut off at the back end there for me.
Oh, no worries. So I just want to kind of get an idea of where the BBL sits kind of in the greater sports ecosystem for England, and are these players full time? Do they all? Is it more of a part time job, and they're working elsewhere to make ends meet? And kind of what's the perception like of the league and the games for fans? Like as I posed out here, minor league baseball, for example, is about affordable family entertainment, and it's like something you're not necessarily going because you care who wins. Oftentimes, you're going for a good time with the family that you can afford. So, give us an idea of just where the BBL sits, and maybe Leicester as well as a club within that economy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the British Basketball League is very much one of the smaller professional sports. Like that said, it is growing. We saw a bunch of positive changes. And it's kind of still recovering from some hard times kind of 20 years ago, and it sort of took a while to break out. We go back a couple of decades, it was on national television with big arenas and being played with some big coaching salaries, big player salaries, some big sponsors involved, and kind of took a dip. It fell off of TV. That hurt a lot of its sponsorship, as you can imagine. That then obviously then hurt its fandom, and kind of has been recovering since. That said, it's in England, right? So soccer dominates, and you have to be very aware that the back 10 pages of the newspaper are going to be about soccer. Of the local sports network time, 95% is going to be around the soccer team. And basketball's competing for their chunk of that other 5%. And so you're competing with rugby, you're competing with cricket. England's a small country. Leicester isn't a massive city, and it's a very, very big sporting city. Have Leicester football, who obviously won Premiership in recent times, have been playing in the Champions League and are up there in the Premier League. Leicester rugby, Leicester Tigers, the rugby team, one of the better teams in Europe in recent years. Again, had a couple of dips. The basketball team very much sits as kind of potentially the third string. Again, I probably have some personal bias there, but in terms of what you're saying, the players are full time. But teams work far more on a European model of trying to put together packages that allow them to still be attractive whilst not potentially playing, big salaries. And when I say big salaries, I'm not talking NBA levels. I'm talking, 6 figures upward type salaries. But players make a living that, is more than comfortable. We as a club did a great job. One of our biggest sponsor was a housing development company, a property development company. So we're able to house our players in really nice housing in the suburbs of the city.
Nice.
So that kind of was taken care of. We had great partners with car partners and local restaurants. And so you're able to put together a package where their wages were very disposable for them. They weren't incurring any costs outside of what they wanted to do with their money. And then we started as a team, in terms of your question around how Leicester sits within the landscape. We were one of the better, if not the best team over the last 10 years, arguably between us and Newcastle Eagles, which is the second team. Those two teams are the only two teams that have their own, dedicated arenas that they own within their own companies. And Leicester opened up, I want to say 5 years ago now. My time might be a little off there, maybe 4. Newcastle more recently, obviously, honestly, about a year before, 6 months, 8 months before COVID hit, which sucks for them for timing to launch a event-based business and then have a pandemic. But those two teams are in a really great place, from having infrastructure to be able to make money around their team, but also around other events they can host, have supplementary incomes in a multitude of ways outside of just tickets. And then, no cost and risk of renting venues. The BBL saw a team in the south of England, the Plymouth Raiders, pull out of the league this year, generally citing the impact of COVID and the fact they don't have their own venue, and they're tied to the costs associated to them with the place they're renting each week. So it's a struggle of a league. It's definitely a grind of a sport to be involved in England, but it's exciting. It's back on Sky Sports TV this past season. Deal continues into next year, which is great. I think it will help them incite some new fans and incite a different fan base. But yeah, your point around like minor league baseball is spot on. It is, when you compare it to soccer, for example, it's a much more family friendly environment. It's much easier. It's much more accessible. The players are much more accessible. Teams do a great job making them available for autographs post game, or sponsor photos pre-game and things. So from every level of being involved in the club, you can touch it and feel it a lot more than you can saying going to a Premier League game, which is far closer to coming to an NBA game here. So it's fun. It's fun to be involved in. It's far more of a family atmosphere. It's small companies and very small companies, which is obviously a challenge at times, but also incredibly rewarding when a small number of you kind of in the trenches together, trying to pull together to the growth of the game. So yeah, really enjoyed my time there. I'm excited to see the growth of the league. I think that there's a bunch of things they can be doing better, which is, I think, a case of most sports leagues, especially minor league. But there's some bright sparks they have, and there's some things that are pulling in their favor in terms of British, top level British talent coming back to the UK due to COVID in the last year. I think a trend that will continue with the UK, coming out of the EU. It will reduce some of the mobility of players, and you'll see again some higher level talent remaining in the country and being part of the league, which is great that you then have those hometown names to tie yourself to, which I think is essential for more minor league sports to have those stories and those touch points that give you things to build around, give you people that can be there for a long period of time too. I think again, like you see in the G League and other minor leagues, the turnover of players is high, and as a fan, that your favorite player moving around each year makes it hard to fall in love with the team, right? So it's one thing we did well at Leicester. We had a strong British core for a long period of time, and I think it's something that's only going to continue. So excited for the future of the league, but a ton of challenges in terms of trying to break out into a more mainstream market, attract larger sponsors, attract larger TV deals, and such like. But definitely trending the right direction as a whole.
Yeah, no, I there's a lot of directions we can go here. I love thinking about the aspect and how you put it of how the league and the team is more accessible. And you think about, you may never be able to go to a Premier League game, or if you're a brand and a sponsor, you're not going to be able to compete with the sponsorships for a Premier League and be able to afford that. But Leicester BBL is more accessible in that sense. What was, or what is the kind of level of awareness and fandom like in Leicester itself? Like, was part of the challenge is making sure that people knew when games were and that this is an opportunity they could be checking out, or was that kind of already part of it and it was more just getting the incremental attendance and getting season ticket memberships or whatnot? So what was that challenge like?
It was all of it. It was from people knowing that there was a basketball team in the city.
Yeah.
There was the challenge of people knowing that basketball had a league in the country, through to then, like, in the latter years, we started to get some level of awareness that we were there. And if you asked them, who the Leicester Riders were, they'd be able to tell you that they were the basketball team. But even then, they probably couldn't tell you where they played or where they were in the league. They'd probably be able to tell you that they were good. But so yeah, it was tough. It was complete culture building, culture awareness stuff that was the biggest challenge. And again, you're up against Leicester, and in my time there, went from being a non-Premier League team to winning the whole thing and being in
Right.
the Champions
The
League.
story of
So we're
sports.
weren't even just playing at the weekends; they were playing midweek games as well to dominate the coverage even more. So yeah, it was tough, but I think, like I said, it just allowed. Whilst it was tough, like our arenas weren't huge. You know, it was 2,500 seat arena for basketball, 3,000 seat for other things. Like it's not this 20,000 seat arena with massive overheads that you're dealing with. There's still business challenges and costs involved, but it gives you a level of comfort that you can, provided you do a good job, you're able to fill it. And we were able to get solid fan growth over my time there. And again, the years I was there, we went from 300-400 people type attendances as I started to 2,000 plus regularly. So the growth was great, and it just needs to keep going. But yeah, man, it was everything. We would, from try and drive that awareness to then trying to drive coverage. We would, win something, and national TV would pick it up, but even locally we'd struggle because Leicester were playing that weekend, and local sport coverage in England is very different to local sport coverage in the cities in the US. It's just a much smaller country. It's much smaller team, so we were producing a lot of the content that, for the Bulls, NBC Sports Chicago would be producing. We were producing in-house ourselves and providing to media companies to drive that coverage. And again, like the back end of time there, if we were able to provide the newspaper a double page spread, we were in the newspaper every day. If we were able to provide TV footage of us winning and good crowds and showing that there's interest, they were willing to cover us. But it was completely driven by us as the team versus external factors. And so yeah, it was a grind, but it was, again, for me, it provided that perfect education, right? Like I needed to make media relations in different ways that I probably don't even think about doing here, So it was perfect from a career growth for me. I hope that it just continues to trend the right way. And I think COVID and the pandemic lockdowns and no fans hurt the basketball league much more considerably than, say, soccer or rugby, right? Because the TV money is not the same. The sponsorship money is not the same, and that on the night revenue from tickets, merchandise, food, beverage sales is what drives the club. So, which is why you see two teams pull out this summer. I hope it stops there. I hope they add some more teams to replace them down the line. But it was, the challenges were daily and multifaceted.
Now, I find it super interesting that you guys, like you said, it's almost, if we want content to get out there, if we want media coverage, like we can provide the media for them, the content for them. So when you are, and I mean, certainly, as you mentioned, that the team was very small in terms of resources and staffing, especially I'm sure compared to the Chicago Bulls now, to juxtapose those two together. So when you're thinking about content that we're going to produce for Leicester, was it really like, were you thinking, okay, what's going to get us the best chance of getting pickup? Like, do we really have to do something that's outside the box? Like, we can't just do a preview of next week's game. We have to do something that's really going to be creative, that local news will want to put on because it's so different. And then how does that affect what you're doing direct to consumer, I guess, direct to fans? You certainly came of age with Leicester as social media became very, very big and very extensive. So like, what went into what kind of content to produce, how much time to spend on it, the volume, the quality, the goals? How'd you guys, what were those conversations like?
Yeah, so the conversations were generally around with me and an agency that we use, but again, a smaller agency that helped with some things, but not everything. And it was exactly kind of the tones you just set, right? Like, it's okay. Like what can we do with the time we have? Because even with my role, it was never just on digital. I was still, even until I left, I was still dealing with a lot of logistical things of running, a large program from a basketball sense. So it was doing the best we could and trying not to judge ourselves too harshly when we fell short on things. It was also with a focus of immediate impact. We had to sometimes sacrifice time on longer term brand building plays because we needed to make sure that we were getting bums on seats for that Friday's game, and
Right.
that had to be the priority, because we're, as a business, if you don't drive that week, that week then doesn't look as busy. Do people come back the following week? Is the atmosphere as good? If someone's coming for the first time that week and it's not full, they may not come back. So like it was a weekly pressure to drive people, like the consumer traffic, so which dictate. And then to the point I made around media, like because the fandom was far more casual, you needed to still be doing all of the baseline. You needed to be doing the preview, because people might not know who you're playing that week, and then if they know the team you're playing, they probably don't know more than one player on that team. Outside of course, the diehards are there week in and week out. So it was this constant battle of like, we want to do this really cool, elaborate stuff that, of course, then for the most part, takes a bunch of time. But you have to make sure that you're doing the baseline. You have to have, the story going to the newspaper every day. You have to make sure that, even baseline stuff like websites were updated. As a league, there wasn't, central feeds to do any of that. So all of that was manual. And so, yeah, it was a battle. It was making sure that we were driving fandom, driving, bums on seats for the games. And then it was do as much as possible to try and move the dial of the perception of basketball in the UK. The league still carried a ton of misconception of like where it was based on things that happened 15 years ago, and just misconceptions on how professional the players were and what the teams looked like, what the games looked like. And very, very, very rarely did we have someone come to a game and be disappointed with the product. It generally exceeded people's expectations. They would leave with remarks of like, "Wow, I can't believe I've not come before," or "That's the best kept secret in Leicester. Like, how do people not know about this?" And so the product on the floor was good. It's exciting. We had great atmosphere in our arenas. Those smaller European arenas produce like a loud buzz that is different to a big arena can create. So yeah, it was great. It was exact from a content sense. It was exactly how you said. It was just a battle of, okay, like, have we done enough to make sure that our arena is full this week, and next week and the week after? And are we doing things to then convert those people to season ticket holders? Are we doing enough to maintain our season ticket holders? And for us, we were a more casual activity. So we were then also super aware of our competitors, not just being the two other massive sport teams in the city that generally would play around the same time as us, which was always a battle as well. Mm. But also, a family would be making a decision of whether to come to the basketball that week or go to the cinema or go bowling, even just go to dinner somewhere. So yeah, it was a ton of direct, like, short-term marketing plays, and then wherever we could try and do something that raised the bar and changed the perception. And we have a ton of examples, but like to give a couple, we did in my penultimate season there, we did a theme night around St. Patrick's Day, which we actually had to go to the league and get approval on breaking rules on jersey colors and stuff because it hadn't been done before, and just themed our entire game like that. We're able to drive, national single game sponsors, which is something we didn't generally pull. It was, if we were selling game sponsorships, it was more around the local basis. So, we were able to attract national brands, attract, a ton of press around it, excite our players as well. We were in a league where us doing a good job digitally and for them led to us being able to recruit higher level players, which obviously then drove a higher level product on the floor, more fans, etc. So we're also you have to keep that in mind as well. It's like, do the players like what we're doing? Because it's not, our contracts aren't big enough to just go and get exactly who we want. We need them to be advocating to their college teammate that's coming out, or a guy they played pro with in Slovenia the year before, that we might want to sign the next season. So the branded game stuff was a step change and an eye opener to me. I think it was about 2 years before I left, that if you can do something exciting and fun then the fans are there. They are absolutely there. It's just getting over the day-to-day things that have to be done to free up enough time and then climb that mountain to do that little bit more to then actually see the impact. And I think that's where teams fall down in the BBL. They aren't able to quite get over that hump. And we were fortunate enough in Leicester to have things come together to allow us to do so. And it was just this perfect storm to be able to do some cool stuff. And then for me personally, that just drove me to want to do bigger and bigger projects and more crazy things. So
Yeah. No, I mean, there's so many great points in there. I think back to the times that I've spent in the college space and minor league space, and you're very much right. Like, yeah, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but someone has to make sure the roster is up to date on the website too, and we have to enter in the stats and at some point, and there's like you have to make sure the lights stay on, so to speak, before you can even move on to the more exciting stuff. Like with Leicester as well. And I want to kind of juxtapose this with the Bulls to some degree. Like, what did move the needle the most to really win over those fans long term? I mean, I think about trying to go into that identity of, hey, you're a Leicester City fan, you should also be a Leicester Riders fan and support the local team. Or maybe there's that brand aspect of it. Like you look at the Bulls and they have this mystique about their brand and how cool it is. And then you have the basketball aspect of it of, hey, come to this weekend's game because it's the top two teams in the league and we're the defending champions. It's like what tended to actually move the needle the most, I guess, both short term as well as long term, what got that fan to go from casual to diehard?
Winning moves the dial. And it sounds obvious, but it is. Like, and I saw it in teams in the league in the UK and talking to them, and they could do exactly the same things as us, make it look even cooler. But when we go and blow them out by 30, the fandom doesn't grow. That isn't something that's fun to come and watch. That isn't something that you can then do cool content around digitally. It isn't something that sponsors want to be associated with, and so the success we had at Leicester was a product of our managing director, our head coach, putting together incredible rosters and competing incredibly well and winning. And that just opened the doors to everything else from a growth standpoint. It allowed fans to latch onto something that was fun and exciting and just that ego boost of being a fan of a good team. So I think there's it. And you see, I come here and I see, the Warriors' digital footprint, the Lakers' digital footprint with LeBron and the Cavs whilst he was there. Like the things that having a great team that wins championships allows you to do cannot be understated. It allows it, and then it snowballs, right? Like that's why I have such respect for what Toronto were able to build and hopefully what we're able to build here in the future is. To be able to break through and knock off someone that's successful means that you've been able to attract better players, be able to play a better way, develop players better. And that's incredibly tough. Winning drives more winning. And the success of the Riders, like once we climbed that mountain, it allowed us to kind of free flow. And we had to check ourselves to try and innovate and keep pushing. And not get comfortable and not get knocked off of being one of the top teams there. But the performance in sport, the performance drives the business, and I think there's a ton of other things that go into it around brand and things you can do that will of course impact it, but nothing, in my opinion, is more powerful than winning because it's what people want to see, it's what you want to support, it's what little kids want to go and emulate, which then drives parents to want to come to the games. And it impacts so many things. It presents such a good environment to work in. It's so much fun. So the winning is what moves the dial, and the struggle is the building up the mountain to the point of knocking off the teams that are better in the first place. And so for the Riders wise, it was we were able to capitalize on our success and just continue to build year on year on that. And obviously, it's never easy. Other teams are trying to do exactly the same thing, but
right.
It does make it a lot easier. It just opens a ton of doors. I remember back to sponsor meetings and walk in and we arrive with the league trophy and put that on the desk for the discussions. And little like fun plays that we do tongue in cheek to
Yeah,
uh,
like
just it's something you want to be a part of. It's something that's cool, and that is definitely what moved the dial for the writer side and allowed me to then do more and more content that looked cool because we had a win and I guess we didn't really talk on schedule, but the BBL plays generally at weekends, so you might play Friday, Sunday, and then have 5-6 days until your next game. If you've lost both of those games and there's not really storylines that you want to dive into too heavily, you're kind of stuck previewing a game on the hope that it goes better the following week and trying to find storylines around the team that's tough. And instead, from us, we were able to then just make a bunch of cool content off the back of those wins, test different things in a fan base that was very positive and happy about how the weekend had gone, and then see what stuck, see what did. And we, over my time there, we did a better veteran job of kind of the analytical tracking side of things and understanding how important it was to understand what content did for our brand, what players were referencing when they came in as to why they were willing to sign with us, what agents were looking at on our channels, to what sponsors were impressed with from an impression stance, from an engagement stance, what they looked for, what they wanted more of, what they wanted less of, what things, when we did certain things on certain weeks, how that affected ticketing and our fan base on the floor. And again, like, it's in this perfect setting that it's a small enough business to see a granular level how all of those things work. And so if you add 3 live previews and a couple of things before, and suddenly your fan base goes up 40% for that weekend in advanced sales, and you're like, okay, well, let's do more of that, or let's take out one thing and see what it was. So that was for us, it was the winning, man. To answer your question, that was a long ramble on, but winning is what moved the dial there. And I think when you look at the Warriors' footprint, for example, here, they were in however many consecutive finals in recent times. It's drove in the social media age. It drives so much.
Yeah, I mean, it always opens doors, and then it's up to you to be ready to step through those doors and understand which doors are worth stepping into, I guess, to not get too deep into the analogy. And as you mentioned, like looking at what is moving the needle, what is driving performance, what is of interest to players, to ticket buying fans, to other fans, to sponsors. So when you get to an organization like the Bulls, where the sheer volume of content and the I guess the strength of the brand too, where you can only, I guess, do so much when it comes to affecting the brand. What was, I guess, first of all, what was it like making that move and really understanding who the Bulls are, what their content looks like, what their content could look like, and really understanding where to spend the time and resources in driving innovation and doing experiments. So take me through a little bit of what that feeling out process was like, going from the Riders to the Bulls, and what some of the similarities and differences are when it comes to the needs and goals and branding around content.
Absolutely. I think it's the biggest thing to note is I arrived here about a month before March 13th, which is where the city went into lockdown. So
it was your fault.
I arrived, I had like a week or so of games. Then we were hosting All-Star in 2020. So got to experience that. And it's just like whirlwind of a couple of weeks, and just started like kind of find my groove. I remember sitting with like management here on a check-in. I was like, yeah, I feel like I kind of loosely understand what the season's going to look like for the rest of the year now. And then we get pulled into a room and get told to go and work from home, and the season's done. So transition was weird. And I think like there's still parts of me that feel, I've been here a year and a half. I still very much feel like the new guy. People reference staff, and I haven't had a conversation with them yet. And, we're starting to drift back into the office here and there, which is great. And but even then, there's places I've not seen and things I don't know how to do and stuff. So it's been a very, very strange of a career move and lifestyle move. Obviously, moving overseas right before a pandemic,
Right.
being away from family and friends has been strange. But for the most part, we were able to, this year we were able to have a season. I was, fortunate to be one of the people traveling with the team, and And so my life didn't look too different, even in the pandemic. So very, very grateful and fortunate for that. But yeah, arriving is just, it's crazy, right? You go from a business that, is single digit staffing on the pro men's team side of things to, a huge office at the United Center and this incredible infrastructure of staff and the ability to focus solely on your job, although that's still your job then becomes a big job with the size of the brand here, but work with like-minded people, bounce ideas off, have incredible creative departments in design and video, and it's awesome. Like the move's been great. I love it. People have been awesome, very welcoming. From a brand sense, I think as well, like content is content. I think a lot of the things that I felt were important in the BBL, I still feel are important here. I think it's important to service your fans and build community, and I think we're trying different things to cultivate that more. I think I've arrived to a team that struggles at times, and missed the playoffs this year. We missed out last year from going to the bubble, and so we're trying to, basketball staff trying to break through and come back to kind of relevancy on the court, and we're trying to do the same from a digital sense. The difference, I guess, is like the brand power of the Bulls is incredible. It's something that from a distance I obviously observed, and you could see how much the 90s had impacted that and grown. The Bulls grew with basketball globally. As this boom happened across the world with basketball, it was closely tied to the guy playing for the Bulls, right? So that the brand power is immense, and I think for me, after a season now, like of kind of navigating that in kind of strange times of COVID, it's exciting because now we can kind of look ahead and we can I'm excited to take some big swings at things and see how they play and try some new things. And kind of talking, just this week around, Summer League coming up and things we can test and community builders we can look at. But in terms of the job, there's a lot more to consider. But also I think that as you add more people, you add time spent on things that are absolutely necessary, but probably aren't impacting production, if that makes sense, right? Like you have greater approval processes, you have the necessity to have, larger meetings because there's multiple people involved. We have, like I said, incredible creative teams that are producing the work rather than me being a one-man band at Leicester. So it's about hearing their vision, sharing our vision, working together on projects. And even then, it's crazy. Like I said, I've gone from a place of single digit staffing to a place of, this huge office of staff. And yet we still sit and feel completely understaffed and overwhelmed with what we're trying to do, given the size of the brand and how important content has become. But again, for me, the navigation has been great. And it's been eye-opening in a lot of ways. And I think I'm just, I guess, after a season and seeing a calendar year in sport, I think is so crucial to be able to then impact things that now starting to see where I can potentially add some value, or at least add some ideas or some different way of thinking coming from where I've come from, which is super fun. And then just continuing to learn from everyone has been awesome too. We have a bunch of staff here and in all departments that have been with the organization or within the league or within sports leagues for a long time. And so it's been a nice comfort blanket to have like all these incredible people around to throw ideas at and then see them take the idea and make it 10 times better than you even thought it could be. So yeah, man, I guess from, like I said, like content is still content, right? You're trying to cultivate fandom. The difference here, we're trying to monetize in different ways. We're able to monetize sponsors on our digital platforms and bring revenue and add value to the business in that sense. We try and do it in a way that's true to our fans and is going to resonate with them. Again, we have these great teams to be able to put those things together and do it in a way that we think is true to the Bulls and true to our brand. And then as we come back, we're going to see I've been here in a whole season without really having it. We had fans in the building for 3 games. So, coming back, I'm going to see more of, what our brand looks like in the city of Chicago, what that looks like at the United Center, our impact on, driving tickets, driving revenue in that sense is going to be added in, which is fun. And then, we continue to try and break the boundaries, do things that are true to us, and do cool things that our fans can enjoy, and that they want to share with their friends, and they want to be a part of. And I think, like, for as long as we keep that in our discussions, it makes it a super fun place to work, and we don't really have to do too many things that we don't like, which is awesome.
When it comes to monetizing content too, I mean, especially I think anyone that works for a sports organization the last year kind of had that mandate even stronger because there was no ticket sales, there was no games at sometimes, so no revenue coming in that sense. So I think the Bulls are among the best in the biz when it comes to integrating partners in a way that in which the content is still very, very good. So for the Bulls, how does sponsor content come together? Is a little bit of chicken and egg where like you guys have a content franchise or a concept first and then it's pitched to a sponsor, other way around where a sponsor comes to you and they want to be involved in social and these are their goals and you develop something, a little combination thereof. So how do those end up coming together to deliver so effectively?
Yeah, man, I think like Luca here and then Dan for us, they've done a great job of working with our partnerships team and then our content studio to build out processes and systems to make that super smooth and not painful at all and exciting for us as creatives. So the process is a mix of what you said, right? We have some things that are, established content franchises that we're able to, pass to our partnerships team to sell in a very, I guess, basic, but that's the lack of a better word way, things that we know that we've done before or we want to do, we think are going to work or we have evidence have worked, that we can attach partners to in different ways, is one way. The other is being, creative and excited on ways to make something new with a partner involved. A lot opens generally. We try and see partnership involvement as a door to being able to do something that potentially we couldn't if there wasn't the money involved. And so with that mindset, it allows you to kind of come with some more big ideas, be able to, utilize different resources and things. So it's fun. It's a fun process. I said, like Luca here, Serena for us as well, working with us, has been great. Like they do a great job of, and it's less so my role, and I kind of dip in and out. But the Bulls in general they've built a great process, which is maybe not the most sexy thing to talk about, but it's so key. Like partnership content is going to touch multiple parts of our business. Again, like you said, like previous to this year and then going into this season, partners are generally involved in different things. It isn't just that they sponsor a quarter score, although sometimes that is, or sponsor a video series or something. They might have in arena activations, and there's different things being balanced. So it's definitely a team effort. Our partnership team's great. Our digital team's great at handling that. And then we have approach of having a content studio to kind of take these things to. So teams from creative services, Bulls TV, our video department, our game entertainment team and Team Benny and different aspects there, as well as then like our digital department. We have processes in place as a content studio amongst those 4 kind of separate departments to come together and brainstorm on these things. And again, we're fortunate to be in a position that we seldom have to do things that we don't like and we don't think make sense. We're given the freedom and the empowered to voice what we think is best for our platforms, and given the autonomy to be able to activate those things for the most part, which is awesome. And again, talking to people as I've got to know people across sports franchises in the US, like that very much isn't the case in all places. So definitely I don't under appreciate that. It's massively important to what we do. And you said, I think much before my time, the Bulls were awesome in terms of how they integrated brands into their content and how they monetized, do it in innovative ways and different ways, and what makes sense for both us and the partner. And again, like what we think is actually going to resonate with our fans. Like there's nothing worse than partnership content, which you can tell is absolutely checkbox partnership content and has no value to the fan base at all. And so for as long as we can avoid that, we do. And we're in a fortunate position that our partnership team have a good understanding of that. And again, that was built much before my time, so much more credit to what I've walked into. But it allows us to do cool things. Even just this week, we unveiled a court with Zenny in the Park District on the south side of Chicago, and did a bunch of content around it. We're able to branch off in cool ways. We have a drop for some custom art basketballs coming up off the back of it, and things that we think are, on trend and on moment for where we're at now, and something our fan base is interested in. And then, as I said, resonates with the partner that's been able to convert a court in, the south side of Chicago, engage with the community there, share their message of vision for all and things there. So, and that's just one example. There's tons as you look through our channels. And actually, I think Benedict, we do such a good job that we spend a lot of time on the partnership content. And I think the exciting thing going forward for us is reclaiming, like, doing things that maybe haven't got a partnership involved with yet, that are a bigger swing and a bigger risk. And that's exciting for me going into next year, that, we're again given the power and the autonomy to come with some big things that potentially could fail and could be a little more risky, and haven't got a partner attached to it yet and things. So it's the gray space that we're able to run into now is super exciting.
Yeah, I want to spend a couple more minutes with you, Joe, talking to Joe Pinchin, manager of digital content for the Chicago Bulls. I want to hit a couple more things before we get to the shareable stat. We'll get there quickly. Time's flying by here. The Bulls and really NBA Twitter overall have a unique voice. So when you're coming into the Bulls and trying to learn their brand, how they speak, I think we think of NBA Twitter and across the board, and there's a lot of snark, there's a lot of personality. So who are the Bulls? Who do they want? How do they want to be? Who do they want to be? And how do you kind of learn that and then activate that as a staff member?
Yeah, so I think coming in, it was easier, I guess, than arriving to some teams, because the voice is similar to what we had tried to be where I've been previously. So our brand is iconic, right? It's historical. It's legendary. So we try and, we're not able to dive into kind of meme culture and things as much as sometimes some of that, right? Like, we're able as staff members to, drive the brand and the voice in the digital space to where we think makes sense in the moment for our fan base. And you saw that with our All-Star campaign this year. Like, I think it's differentiated. I think it's a lot of things. And I think for us, it's evolving. I think one thing that is interesting is coming in as a British person to an American brand voice is challenging at times, just from even a spelling alteration sense of how American English is different to British English, and how, as a Brit, I may say something and would very much not stick well with an American brand voice. So it's been fun. Nico Tan, who I work with super closely on the basketball side of content, is incredible publisher for us, and takes care of a lot of that solely. So for us, we're able to lean on him and kind of have him as our guiding post, which is great to have a singular kind of person being the day-to-day voice, which then when we jump back in as a multifaceted team, it kind of keeps us all aligned, which is super cool. So it was a pretty smooth adjustment. I think it would have been a much heavier adjustment going into a brand that does lean more into a meme culture, or leans more into, going back and forth with other teams and things. Like, we don't do a ton of that. We do stay a little bit more on a straight and narrow. So I think it's been simple, but at the same time, I'm excited to see again where it can grow to, and again to throw the rule book out every now and again and see what sticks with our fan base.
One last thing for you before you shareable stat, Joe, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about it because it took over the sporting world last year, and that's The Last Dance. I mean, it was, I'm sure the numbers were huge for the Bulls social accounts. the organization just did a phenomenal job of activating around The Last Dance. So to take me through, I guess, what the preparation was like, going into it, if you guys anticipated such an explosion of engagement and an interest on your guys' platforms, and how you guys ultimately were able to capitalize so much on the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. And again, like for me, very fortunate, right? Like I arrived to Chicago, I'm here a week, and then it's NBA All Star Weekend. The season gets shut down. We're all in a pandemic, and then ESPN moves up a documentary which the whole world is waiting for, and we're at the forefront of it, whilst there's nothing else happening in the world of sports at that time. And so, yeah, it was awesome. Like for me personally, to arrive and be like literally the focal point of the sporting world, as egotistical as that is to say out loud, over those weeks. Like we were like on those, when the episodes were airing, it was the thing that was going on. It had everybody's eyeballs. The viewing figures are incredible. The documentary itself was awesome. Obviously, it won a bunch of awards, and absolutely rightfully so. But yeah, in terms of process, we knew it was coming. Again, people from before, when I arrived in February, March time, like were already kind of doing some prep work on it. We had launched at Bulls Archive as an account, again, in somewhat to nod to the fact that we have all this incredible archive footage and photos ourselves, even before what's available from the NBA. Just because we still have the same photographer in Bill Smith that was here in the 90s. So we still have access to all of his incredible work at that time, and things that has just at that time in print age, you take a couple hundred photos or whatever the volume is over a week. Very few of them are seeing the light of day in an age before digital, right? So there's binders and binders here in an archive room of things that need to be scanned in and digitized. And so, from a prep sense, Launch Bulls Archive. Did some prep work with ESPN in terms of collaborating with them on some level. It wasn't super detailed. I think we probably, going back, could have done more there, but it gave us a bit of a heads up of at least knowing some of the trends and things that were coming. Allowed us to prep some content in advance to be able to react in a really cool way in real time. And then again, we just have this ridiculously talented group of individuals creatively that are able to do, from Jimmy Mitchell, an incredible graphic driver for us, through to our video team of Bulls TV and the staff there, through to our publishing staff. We were able to split up. There wasn't a lot else going on, so we were able to just, dial our channels to The Last Dance and be this throwback and just lean wholeheartedly into nostalgia for the 5 weeks, which was awesome. For me, that was my basketball education, watching VHS reruns of Jordan's finals events that my dad had taped when he was interested in basketball. So then be reliving all of that was incredible. We were able to obviously grow our main channels and do some pretty impressive numbers on content there, but also really grow our Bulls Archive account to almost 100,000 now, which has then led to us being able to monetize that. We have a sponsored series running exclusively on our archive accounts for the first time this summer. And again, that was off the back of that power of nostalgia and just how impactful the Bulls were in the 90s. And so, incredible working experience. Proud of our efforts on a tough way of working. We were at home on Zoom calls and trying to pull archive stuff without being able to go into the office and all these things. So super weird few weeks, but incredible. Definitely a career highlight for me, and I'm sure other people involved. And again, just fortunate as the Bulls for that Michael Jordan guy and that team in those years. What they were able to achieve is still driving interest to our team now. So it's incredible that is the case. How so long after, but super fun to be involved. And now we're able to lean into that nostalgia, recapture fans of that age that lived it, and then expose our current fans to an age that they may not have lived. So Awesome all-round experience, and I think we were able to do a good job, especially growing out Bulls Archive to the point of being able to monetize now from a branding sense, which is great.
Well, on behalf of sports fans everywhere, thank you to the Bulls for doing such a great job of making the experience even better. Watching The Last Dance, it was so much fun, and you guys really did do a great job with Bulls Archive and really across the board. But Joe, I looked up and the time just flown by, so we're gonna have some more fun with our and ones segment. But first episode's shareable stat coming right up. Great chatting with Joe Pinchin, manager of digital content with the Chicago Bulls. Just so much fun hearing about his time with the BBL and what he learned from the Leicester Riders, the British Basketball League, to now moving to the enormous organization and brand that is the Chicago Bulls and their success there. Just what a cool, I'm so jealous just hearing him talk about being part of The Last Dance and being kind of behind the scenes of it and activating. And that's where this episode of Shareable Stat comes in. This episode of Shareable Stat is about being ready for the moment, and it comes from the recent, depending on when you're listening to this, signing of Lionel Messi by Paris Saint-Germain, by PSG. And there were a lot of numbers floating around about how much their Instagram grew in particular. There was a little bit of a hoax that made it look like they had grown, I think, like 20-plus million followers. In fact, in the 2 days surrounding that signing, they gained 5.75, almost 6 million Instagram followers in just those 2 days, according to CrowdTangle. And what that speaks to is, yes, Messi is enormous, and he has 250 million or so, maybe a little short of that, on his Instagram alone. So if you just get a small percentage of that audience to join your club as well, you're going to grow. But how can you make sure that you're ready for the moment? Again, we talk about this all the time on this podcast of, yes, you're not going to be able to control wins and losses necessarily. You're not going to be able to snap your fingers and have maybe the greatest football player or soccer player ever get signed by your team and take off like that. But you can be ready for those moments. You can have a plan. What are we going to do to maximize this moment or the chance of this moment? When the first inkling of Messi coming to PSG came out, you could start putting together plans. When you are making the playoffs or playing in that championship game, or the player is this far short of a milestone, whatever it may be, you're going to have that moment when your numbers are going to take off. The Last Dance comes on for the Bulls. How can they make sure to maximize those moments, capitalize on whatever that may mean? Audience growth, data capture, trying new content ideas, monetizing through sponsors, selling tickets, whatever it might be, selling merch. How can you make sure to maximize those moments? You're going to get your pocket aces every now and then in the game. How do you make sure the pot is the biggest pot that you can possibly manage by being smart about it and being ready for it? So that's a shareable stat. Again, 5.75 million, according to CrowdTangle, is how many followers that the Paris Saint-Germain, the PSG main account on Instagram, gained in the 2 days surrounding the announcement and signing of Leo Messi. 5.75 million followers. Not bad for 2 days' work. All right, stick around for a lot of fun coming up with some quick hitting questions with Joe Pinchin of the Chicago Bulls. Right back in this episode's shareable stat, and I'm joined once again by Joe Pinchin. He is the manager of digital content for the Chicago Bulls. Joe had a great time in the interview. You ran the floor. You made a basket. I am running out of basketball analogies, but are you now ready for some and ones? Because you earned it.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, step up to the free throw line. And number one, tell me, looking back at your time with the Leicester Riders, your favorite piece of content that you guys put out during your time with the team. What's the one that sticks in your mind?
So I alluded to it in the interview, but the St. Patrick's Day game and our kind of content around that week in build up and post, kind of converting our arena to our brand colors there were black and red, which is also funny that I went from black and red at the Riders to black and red at the Bulls. But yeah, flipping everything to green, kind of leaning into the St. Patrick's Day vibe. And then the secondary to that is the following year we did a Diwali based game, which is, a nod to, the Indian population in Leicester, celebrating. So, it was great. Both of those theme games, definitely fun memories from a content sense there.
I love that. That's awesome. And that's cool that the black and red is still with you so that you can wear the same suit colors.
Yeah, absolutely. Like clothing and shoes, all sorts. They still have a ton of black and red.
Number two for you, Joe. Tell me the non-Chicago team and the non-NBA team whose content you admire and why.
It's interesting. So, always been a fan of Duke's content and Ohio State's content, which
Yeah.
is both non-Chicago and non-NBA. Enjoy college content in general, actually, like especially college football. Something to me about the visuals of helmets and like what you can do with that just creates such powerful aesthetics, and just love the, it's a different level of access, different kind of athlete you're working with, and different stories to tell. So yeah, enjoyed their content specifically as well. Enjoyed Duke women's basketball content and how much that has changed over the last couple of years. I think they do an incredible job and have kind of jumped up from a women's basketball sphere in a really, really strong way.
Yeah, no, I like those call outs for sure. And I mean, it's not that dissimilar from what you were doing at Leicester, where your content really can move the needle in terms of the players that want to come play for you, just like the recruits that want to come to your school as well. It's cool that can have that kind of effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's key. Absolute key for content, and even more so now moving into the name, image, likeness stuff in college sports.
That's a whole nother podcast conversation for sure. Number 3 for you, Joe. We like to get to know our guests here a little bit. So just tell me, what's the last TV show you watched?
I have been binging the All or Nothings on Amazon Prime of late. I'd watched a couple, just been gone back and watched a few more of them. So yeah, that's been my go-to when I've put a show on recently.
Definitely great stuff, and I'm sure it's inspirational as well for what you guys can do on the team side yourself. And you're a glutton for it. You can't get enough of sports content. You got to watch All or Nothing in your spare time as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Number 4. I'm interested in this one for sure. Tell me your favorite basketball player growing up, and whether they are NBA, BBL, or one of each.
NBA, it was Kobe. BBL, where I lived, and again, like I grew up in a time where it was on TV a little, but not a lot, and then wasn't really around at all where I was. So my basketball fandom started with NBA and college basketball. So yeah, from a NBA sense, is Kobe. Like just
totally.
Grew up watching MJ stuff and reruns of the Bulls a little bit, like as I said earlier, but it was Kobe in the league at that point. And so for me, that was, definitely Kobe.
Definitely a good one there. No disagreements on Kobe. Definitely. Number 5, I'm interested in hearing this one. Tell me the key to great content is what?
For me, it's passion. I think that if you're passionate about something, you're then, inquisitive and curious, and you want to test things, you want to know all about it, and you want to pour yourself into it. And I think that that resonates with a fan base. Is for us, from the pieces of content that we strive over the most and really pour our hearts into is generally the stuff that performs the best. And that doesn't mean it's always the longest amount of time and, big produced things, but I think if you do things with passion, generally resonates with a fan base. And it also leads to a way of working that makes you want to be better each day, makes you want to learn, makes you want to be aware of everything that's going on. And so for me, key to great content is passion for your job.
Yeah, I love that. It shines through, and you want your fans to feel something, and you got to put that passion into it to make that happen. That's great. Number 6. This is a great one to hear about. So if anyone does not know, Benny the Bull is maybe one of the best mascots in sports, and just has taken over TikTok, and was Snapchat before that as well a little bit. So tell me about Benny the Bull and his ridiculously amazing TikTok, and how he's really just succeed on that platform so well.
Yeah, I think TikTok launching staff here within our digital department and Team Benny, and it obviously again predates me, but made the call to use Benny and grow out in that space, and it was obviously a supernatural fit for TikTok. Benny can be mischievous and funny, and the kid inside us, and all these things. And I think Benny's brand has gone leaps and bounds in even just the year I've been here, but predate that as well. And so Team Benny do an incredible job with that content on TikTok, but other channels as well. I think his presence is great. Definitely is a fun follow, and for us it's super important. Right, engages a different audience. Benny doesn't win or lose games. Benny doesn't get traded. Benny doesn't sign somewhere else in free agency. Although he's growing up to a level with his brand that maybe he could be free agent acquisition soon. But so I think it's something that is just it's very different to the basketball team, but it's something that is just going to be a constant in the Bulls brand. And I think that what's exciting is there's so much room for growth there still. It gives us a personality that we can build around, which you see the success of in kind of influencer culture, creators culture now in TikTok and YouTube and other places. So it's awesome. They do an awesome job. I enjoy being involved in those projects when they come up. But yeah, absolute props to Team Benny's staff on what they do there.
No, I appreciate that. That's a really, really well put answer, and thinking about the benefits that Benny has. And to your point, like social media is really going in the direction of individuals and creators, and Benny is one of the best creators on that you guys have at the Bulls' disposal. That's fantastic. Number 7, looking at the player side, tell me the Bulls players that do the best job personally on their social media and why.
Yeah, so I think I'm not going to say the best, but I want to highlight one thing. I think I enjoyed 2 things actually. So one, Thad Young this year, someone that's a veteran in the league, had not been particularly active on social, has reached out and has relearned the importance of it, and is working with agencies and things to grow his brand and be more active. And I think it's cool to see players of all stages of their career using their platform, and him kind of working in a different way than potentially some of the different players on the team. So that's been interesting to interact with him on, chat about what his values are and why he's doing it. And the other one is what Kobe White did with his platform this year. Someone that isn't potentially the most outspoken, and finding a way on his platform to be true to himself, but also raise awareness of causes and issues that were true to him and important to him. He, for those who don't know, take a look back on his Instagram. If you scroll through, he wore hoodies designed with different messaging to each game. Obviously, it's something as walk-ins that we capture anyway, but worked with him and to make those images available, make sure he had what he needed to be able to post as well, and essentially leverage his voice to raise awareness from social justice issues to mental health to things that were important to him. And I think that it's a great case study, because I think that there's pressure on athletes, and some deserve, some not deserve, to use their voice for change. And I think that athletes feel that, and I think that Kobe was able to take a step back and do something that was true to him and his brand, and his values, in a way that was completely created by him and ornate to him, and it was different to what made sense for other athletes. And I think in that way, massive respect to him to do it as a young guy to speak out on things in general is always good, and then to do it in a way that made sense with him in terms of how he used his platform was super cool. I think it's something that athletes can look at and learn from, to take a hard look at what makes sense for them, versus always just kind of jumping on trends or doing what other athletes are doing. I think your platform as an athlete is your voice, the same way it is your brand, as a brand account, right? So him doing what made sense to him is definitely something that I admired this year.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's a great one, and I definitely, Kobe White was one of the names in my mind as well as I asked that question. That's fantastic. Number 8, time to ask our food question. You maybe haven't been able to explore Chicago's food scene quite as much as you would have otherwise without a pandemic, but just tell me the best meal to get in Chicago, where to get it, and also if we go visit your old stomping grounds in Leicester, what's the best meal to get out there?
Well, Chicago, I'm still exploring, so I will happily take recommendations of anyone listening that has had great meals in Chicago. Love, as a European guy, I love sandwiches, love bread. As a sandwich spot here, Capriati's is tremendous, but obviously I've tried deep dish pizza and other things, but definitely
deep dish pizza, buy or sell?
I'm buying. I'm a big pizza guy. Any format, thin crust, deep dish, thick crust. I'll calzone. I'll happily eat pizza every day. So yeah, absolutely down for any of that. Leicester, as I mentioned earlier, like heavy population of Indian people, Indian food is
Mhm.
incredible in Leicester. I read a stat. I'm not sure if it is still true, but it was when I read it, I at least took it as truth. Was that it's one of the densest populations of Indian heritage people in the world outside of India, and so the Indian food you can have in Leicester is some of the best in the world, and still looking for a place in Chicago or places in Chicago that can replicate what you can get in 100 different restaurants in Leicester. So yeah, definitely the meal here in Leicester is um, to head to kind of Golden Mile location and check out any of the kind of Indian food locations. There's a ton. Personal favorite would be a place called Wolfpack, but yeah, just Indian food in Leicester is definitely the go-to.
Sounds good to me, man. Number nine. This is gonna be an interesting one. So tell me, we like to talk about sometimes like the quote unquote British slang, or you're watching a football match and you hear some of those British words, those UK words in the English language that we Americans haven't adopted yet. So what's a word, whether it's a slang word or a word that you guys use in the UK, or that we don't use out in the States quite as much, that Americans should adopt and start using?
Yeah, I struggled on this because obviously been around like US culture for a long period of time. What I'm going to do instead is pivot and keeping on the food trend. Not a word, but
Mhm.
Americans need to improve their bread. You cannot get good bread in the US from my experiences so far. I would love them to take British culture, sandwiches over everything, and improve their bread issues that we have in this country.
I like that.
I'm diving your British word because when I was thinking through them, um, I'm not sure there's anything that I missed particularly that you don't say here. So
No, I like that we can hit up the bakers and work on a better bread option out here. uh,
absolutely
number
necessary.
number 10 to go out on, Joe. Just tell me, this is your open floor. One fun fact or one lesson that you've learned that we haven't just touched on this interview so far.
Geez, yeah, this is a big one as well. I think for me, it's just I guess lesson learned was very much to kind of just follow what you're passionate about. And I think that
Yeah.
landing here and doing these interviews and talking about content is definitely not something I ever had in mind. I definitely wasn't someone that is particularly great at kind of mapping out their career in any way. But I think what I have found is that if you're doing things that you know, doing things that you're passionate about, it's gonna end up in a good place. You're gonna enjoy life. You're gonna enjoy your work. You're gonna find people that are like-minded, um, and good things are going to come off the back of it because you're going to be able to put in the time and not really find that it's work. So for me, that's basketball. I'm able to, I played, I coached. Now I'm working alongside some of the best in the world and able to see how these guys do it day in and day out, and incredibly grateful for that. But I think it's pretty much just come off the back of enjoying what I do and trying to pour myself into it. So less of a fun fact, but
No, I love
definitely is
that.
reflect and doing these type of podcasts and talking about the journey. It's definitely been a fun one so far. I'm excited to see what the future holds in the sport for me.
That's a great note for us to finish on. So now it's your chance, Joe, to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. It can be whoever they are, what platform, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Tell us who they are and why they're worth following.
So I am going to plug my colleague at the Nico Tan. Dude's a superstar. For me coming in, you never know when you come into a new business what it's going to be like to work with staff, manage staff, etc. He's a dream to work with. Exciting young talent. Just this year picked up kind of photography skills that he didn't have before. So definitely going to be doing bright things in the social media sportscape for a long time to come. So selfish / plug, but Bull's colleague is at the Nico Tan on Twitter.
Beautiful. No, that's definitely good. When you and I were talking about him doing a great job with the Falcons before coming to the Bulls. So Definitely a great one to shout out Nico there. And how about you, Joe? Where can we find you as well as all things Chicago Bulls on digital and social media?
Yeah, so Bulls First absolutely is obviously at Chicago Bulls, but also we've launched recently at Bulls Community to highlight some of the work we're doing more locally and kind of again separate and differentiate our audience a little there. At Bulls Archive, at Benny the Bull, at Windy City Bulls, at Lover Bulls, at Bucket Boys, at and the list goes on and on. So I think we didn't really touch on the interview, but we have a ton of accounts, and we continue to grow out new spaces for our fandom to engage with each other and engage with us. So definitely check out everywhere the Bulls is. And then me, I'm just at Joe Pinchin, JoePinchin on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I think I'm Joe Pinchin one, but I don't really use too much on my personal account. But you just see some random behind the scenes. But Instagram, Twitter for me. Post occasionally when I can remember to log back in, because most things on my phone and browsers don't let me have enough accounts to be able to log into my personal one too often. Yeah, absolutely check me out there.
No, I definitely. To your point, the Bulls have a ton of accounts you can look at, and it's really cool to see that strategy play out. And we could spend another hour or two just talking about that aspect of it as well, but Joe, cannot thank you enough for your time. Really enjoyed picking your brain today, learning about the Leicester Riders, learning about Chicago Bulls and their content and strategy, and just a fantastic time getting to know you today.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much again to Joe Pinchin, manager of digital content with the Chicago Bulls. Looking forward to him this season having what feels like something closer to a normal season, even if it's not completely normal yet. But what a great opportunity to pick his brain and learn about his background and how the Bulls do what they do. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for downloading or listening. As always, I'm your trusty host, Neil Horowitz. Hit me up on Twitter at NJH287. Connect on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, where you can find out more about the podcast, episodes, more content, and me. And, of course, follow the podcast, subscribe, whatever it is you'd like to do on your preferred podcast platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.